What made you focus on execution?
I came to a turning point in my life. And that's the point where I said, well, what do I really think I was born to do? If you want to achieve something extraordinary, you can't pursue very many simultaneous objectives.
What are the biggest myths or mistakes that leaders make when they try to execute?
The problem with top down leadership is people have no involvement. All they do is take orders. So if you give people some involvement, they will commit.
How do you keep mindset aligned so that execution doesn't falter?
The real problem with execution is that we don't approach it with the kind of rigor and intentionality that we need to. We overcomplicate it, and yet at the same time, we don't give it enough focus.
This is the Authentic Edge podcast. Real conversations with real leaders who've dropped the mask, faced the truth, and found growth that actually fits. I'm Mike Secord, and every episode, we pull back the curtain on what it takes to lead, live, and grow with authenticity. Because here, authenticity always wins.
Welcome, everyone, to the Authentic Edge. I've got today a guest, a very special guest of Jim Huling. Just kind of want to give a little bit of background about Jim, and then we're going to roll right into this. So Jim, my guest today, he's a globally recognized executive coach. He's a keynote speaker. He's a best-selling author whose work has inspired many leaders across Fortune 500 companies, high growth businesses, nonprofits around the world. He's made impacts everywhere. He's co-authored The Four Disciplines of Execution, the #1 global bestseller that's transformed how leaders focus, execute, and deliver results that truly matter. Jim's known for blending strategy with heart, helping leaders achieve extraordinary results while deepening the humanity of their leadership. He's coached hundreds of senior executives, taught teams how to execute with purpose, and continues to model what authentic leadership looks like every day. Jim, I'm truly honored to have you here on my podcast on Authentic Edge. And like I said, prior to jumping on this, I think we have some great alignment. I have nowhere near been in some of the rooms that you've been in or co-authored a book as great as yours. But I think we have some really good personal core values that align. And I do believe that through this little story, what we're going to share, you're going to make an impact on our audience and make impact on people. So Jim, the first question I have for you is tell us a little bit about your journey from your early career to your CEO to global consultant. What made you focus on execution?
Yeah, it's a great question. And by the way, I wanted to have a chance to say thanks. I'm awfully honored to be one of your guests and happy to be in the inaugural phase of this fabulous podcast, which I'm sure is going to go on to be one of the top ones in the world, brother. So thank you for having me on today. And I really like this question, although you realize you're asking me to condense 43 years of leadership experience into kind of a soundbite, but I think I can do it honestly
Oh, I know
by
you can.
saying, I started many, many years ago as what we used to call a programmer. Today, we like to say coder, but I was in the IT world. And I ended up with 20 years in the IT world. I became CIO of a very large multi-billion-dollar corporation here, headquartered here in the United States. And then I made a bridge over to being CEO of a technology company. So it was kind of a natural leap. I'd been a CIO, and I thought, well, how hard can it be to be a CEO?
Mhm.
And I was like everybody else. Everybody that's listening to this right now has at least in one moment said, I could do what he does, or I could do what she does, or how hard could that be? Right? And that's a pretty good sign that you've never tried it, because
Mhm.
when I leapt across that chasm and landed on this other side of the bank where I was suddenly in charge of everything and responsible for everything, it was one of the most frightening moments of my life. But I did go on. I had 11 years as a CEO, a wonderful time in my life, a truly great company. And we did win the Best Places to Work in America award 4 times in a row. And some good things happened in those years. So I'm
Yeah.
really proud of that. But I've rushed to the first part of the story in order to get to what for me
Mhm.
personally is kind of the pinnacle moment is I absolutely burned out in the CEO job. It's if you haven't been a CEO, please believe me when I say that CEO years are like dog years. Every one of them is worth like seven,
Mhm.
And so by the time I finished 11 years, it kind of felt like 77 or 7 years a
Hmm.
real heavy responsibility, lots of decisions to be made. I came to a turning point in my life. And that's the point where I said, well, what do I really think I was born to do? I sort of got into IT early on and then had enough
Hmm.
success that it was always a pleasant and a wonderful, rewarding place to be. But I didn't really choose it in that sense. It sort of chose me. So here I am at midlife, and I'm really tired of this other job where I get to ask these big questions, like you coach people to ask all the
Hmm.
time. And so I really searched my heart for it. And it's another story that would take a whole podcast episode to answer. But I'll just give you the punchline of it right now, is that what came back when you ask a question, you will get an answer if you just listen. I got the answer back that I was really born to be a teacher. And I had never been a teacher. I'd been a leader, and I hope I
Hmm.
taught people in some ways by the way I led, but I'd never applied myself to trying to communicate concepts and insights to other people in a way that would help them. And the minute I discovered it, Mike, I know this sounds like an infomercial, sort of,
Yeah,
but
that's
the
great.
moment I tuned into that wavelength, my whole life changed, and
Hmm.
everything about me changed, and every bit of energy and joy that I have had from that moment to this all came. That was the point of origin, and I had that moment, and it led me to work for Dr. Stephen Covey for 14 years. I was a global managing consultant for Franklin Covey, and then the last 4 years to bridge from that role into coaching, like I know you do, coaching leaders every day.
Hmm.
So I think that wasn't the short version. I think that was too long, but it gives you
That was a
kind of a sense.
great version.
44 years. And can I finish with something? I get to say something in my life that almost nobody ever says. This is the best chapter of my life. Now, for your audience who might not be seeing me, they might be just hearing me. I'm 71 years old this year, and I'm still working a full day every day. I love what I do. I get up with energy, and I go to CrossFit. When I get home from CrossFit, the rest of my day is helping leaders. I have 19 leadership clients in 5 countries, and I help one or two of them every single day of my life. And this is the greatest job I've ever had. So I hope that wasn't too long, but it gives you a
No,
sense
that
of.
was perfect. That was perfect. And I love that because it's, it just keeps reminding people that, I found it time and time again, and I think you found it in your CEO days. Is like we just complicate things. We have so much pressure. It's always complicating. And when you could just quiet everything around you, you're like, oh
Yes.
my gosh, this is what I'm meant to do. And it's like this almost sounds too simple.
Is that true?
But it really is, and that's so great to hear that side of your story. Um, so with that being said, with that execution, the reason I asked that question and then your answer was so perfect to it is I tell people lots of times, I'm like, a lot of you are asking the wrong question. Like I would
Mm,
get in rooms and people want to be like, what are you doing? And I'm
mm,
like, you don't
mm.
want the doing answer. What you need to ask is, what what did I do to get here? The did question is there. And so hear your
Mm,
journey from where you've been. Now I think people can start aligning going, hey, that's what he did. That's what I need to did.
mm.
And I
Yes.
could go
I
there. So,
love that phrase.
so I think it's really big. So what are the biggest myths or mistakes that
Mm.
leaders make when they try to execute? When
Oh,
you're
yeah.
got into execute,
Yeah.
what's the biggest myth or mistake that they're
Wow.
making?
Now that question is like a pinata to me, because the
Hmm.
moment I hit it, 1,000 little answers come in my brain. But I'll tell you the best thing right up front is I think real problem with execution is that we don't approach it with the kind of rigor and intentionality that we need to. We overcomplicate it, and yet at the same time, we don't give it enough focus. So, of all the teams, well, think of all the times you've seen a leader come up with a strategy and build a PowerPoint slide deck and buy pizza and have a launch meeting, and everybody claps and cheers and right at that moment, if you're a leader, if you ever had this moment, you think, wow,
Hmm.
I really did this. Hey, I know what I'm doing. And what leaders don't realize is that moment right there at the pizza party, that's the best moment they're ever going to have because it's
Hmm.
all downhill after that, because you've designed a strategy, but now you have to get people to go do the strategy. And usually, in order to do the strategy, it means we have to do something differently.
Hmm.
We can't expect different results if we don't do different things. And that means people have to change their behavior. And I don't know anything in the world, Mike. I'd love to hear if you agree with me on this. That's harder than changing human behavior. I think getting people to change is about the hardest thing there is.
Yeah, it
So
is.
think about how hard it is for a leader. You can't execute your new strategy unless you can get your people to do new things.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing on earth anybody woke up this morning hoping their boss wanted them to do was something new, right? We
Mm-hmm.
we get really accustomed to it. So I think the real challenge is
It is.
overcoming the inertia of that. And in the simple methodology that Chris McChesney and I developed, 4 disciplines of execution, we outlined four principles that make it easy to get people to do something different. I don't want to say that it's effortless, but I want to say that it's really, really simple. And that's been, I think, that the worldwide success of that book, 16 languages now, and so many countries
Mm-hmm.
all over. I think it's because it's so simple rather than being so profound. I hope it is a profound book, but I think we would hang our hat on the simplicity of it, and that's really the key.
Yeah, that's great. And that leads me right in our next question because the 4 disciplines that you kind of came up with for small business and things was focusing on what you call your WIGs, the lead measures, scoreboards, and accountability. So for our audience here, for leaders, entrepreneurs, real estate agents,
Mm,
what would you suggest as their first WIG?
sure.
What lead measure might matter most for them when we look at those
Mhm.
4 practicals and then
Yeah, I
looking
think
into
that's a great, what a
WIG?
great, you're quite a student, I think, because you've done some homework. That you're asking exactly the right questions today. I'm mightily impressed and really grateful for the preparation I can tell has gone into this. We typically say WIG just to make it easier,
Hmm.
but WIG is an acronym for wildly important goal, and it's really the starting point. The single biggest thing that we have to get through to leaders is if you want to achieve something extraordinary, you can't pursue very many simultaneous objectives. You just can't do it. The law of diminishing returns that we all learned in high school, we had no idea it applied to business. But it's really true. The more things you try to achieve, the less probability you have of actually achieving them. So
Hmm.
principle number one is to do the hardest thing any leader of any business size will ever do. And that is to name one goal as the single most important goal for this period or this year. Just pick one. And Mike, I hope you enjoy the humor of this because I mean it in a good way.
Hmm.
If you want to see the blood leave the face of an executive, you say, yeah, your first task is to pick the number one goal that's more
Oh yeah.
important than all the others. This A silence falls across the room, right? Now,
Hmm.
if I said, tell me the 10 goals that matter most, every executive in the world would rattle them off from memory. They know them so well.
Hmm.
But it's a harder question to say which one matters most. And yet that is the key to executing on anything, really. So people in your audience, for example, if you're running a small business, you got to say this year 17 things are important, but this one is number one.
Hmm.
But even in your personal life, if you're undergoing a physical transformation this year, you can't take 6 simultaneous things you're trying to pursue and expect to be great at them. You've got to have the discipline of focus, which means, and I know it's hard, I'm not saying it casually, you got to
Hmm.
choose what is number one and then allow everything else to be number two through X. But something has to be number one. And you have to give it then what would be appropriate for number one. It has to give your best energy, your greatest amount of time, your greatest creativity, your deepest commitment. Got to all go to that number one
Hmm.
like it really was number one. Well, if we can get a leader to do that, discipline 2, 3, and 4 become incredibly simple for that. And I'm not sure if you wanted me to talk about each of the others, but I hope I did a good job of getting across this idea of discipline one.
No, I think that was great. And I mean, we've opened the door. We might as well go down a little bit. So how, as you said, okay, that discipline one is kind of like that first domino that you got to hit to go
Right,
down there. It's getting that
right.
first thing and lined in. How do you then start building the lead measures, the scoreboards, and
Yeah,
accountability
beautiful,
quickly
beautiful,
on that one
beautiful.
thing? A
Yeah,
mentor of
such a good
mine
question.
says all the time is like, no one ever got wealthy being good at a lot of things. They got
Yeah,
wealthy being good at one thing. And then that
that's
wealthy
so true.
spot allowed them to get good at other things.
That's right. That's so right. In fact, the fastest way to be mediocre is to try to be great at 5 things at the same time. There's
Hmm.
nobody on earth that can do it. You can't.
No.
Now, over time, you can be great at 5 things, one at a time. Yeah, you can do that, and that's a worthy aspiration. But if you try to do five, you're going to end up spreading yourself so thinly across the five that none of them will really get a lot of attention, and therefore you won't hit anything great.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really just another way of saying discipline one. Discipline two is a really powerful one. In fact, we often say privately, discipline two is really the secret sauce of the 40X. Remember, there are 30,000 companies around the world using the four disciplines of execution. Millions upon millions of employees are using it. So I'm standing on the confidence of that experience when I say
Mm-hmm.
all of this with such confidence. I don't want anybody to think I'm arrogant about it, but we've implemented with so many that now I can really say it in a clear way. So I hope that's coming across the way I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So discipline two is the one that will trip you up because, Mike, once you've chosen one goal that matters more than all the rest, that's discipline one, wildly important goal,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to find the fewest human behaviors that have the greatest impact on the goal. So I referred to discipline one as the discipline of focus. Well, discipline two is the discipline of leverage. And it's counterintuitive because almost every leader that, okay, let's say they pick one goal, this is the big goal, they really get
Mm-hmm.
revved up about we're going to do this one goal. The instinct we have is, so we're going to need to do everything. Guys, we need to do everything we can think of to hit this goal because this is our number one goal. Well, the truth is you should be doing the opposite of that. You should be saying, what are the fewest things we could focus on that have the greatest impact on the goal? Because
Mm-hmm.
the less you have, the more energy you're going to invest in those. And the more energy you invest in them, if you've picked the right ones, the more it will drive the goal to where you want. So, for example, sales teams, you're more of an expert than I am in the things I've seen you talk about so beautifully. But in a sales team, if you have a goal of hitting a new revenue target, it's very natural to say, well, how do you do that? Well, we just do more sales calls. And if you've led a sales team, which you and I have in our own
Mm-hmm.
ways, in our own times, that's like the single worst way to drive a sales goal, is to say,
Yeah.
do everything you think of, right? So what you have to find are the few behaviors that really move the revenue number, if you're using this example. So you might say, well, okay, then it's not just sales calls. We can't just increase the number of sales calls, because what if all the sales calls are mediocre? That's not going to move the number. So see how it's not enough, but
Mm-hmm.
you're on a journey of saying, well, what actions move the goal? Pretend it's sales calls. Then to say, how do we make sales calls high impact? Well, maybe we have standards, maybe we have a script, maybe we have quality training, maybe we have all kinds of things we do, but we use that second discipline like the pistons in an automobile.
Okay.
The steering wheel is discipline one, but the engine revving, that's discipline two. That's a whole bunch of people concentrating on the few things that really make a difference. So that's discipline two. I'll be quicker on the others. Discipline
You're
three
good. You're good. That was a
is
great
my favorite
example.
discipline. This is my favorite one. So discipline three is the discipline of engagement. Now, really fast, so I'm a good teacher, Mike. One was focus, two was leverage. Discipline three is about engagement. So if you think about it, discipline one and two are sort of from the mind, and
Mm-hmm.
discipline three is from the heart. So in other words,
Mm-hmm.
discipline three is the one that says, let's not only be clear about what we're doing, let's not only be precise about how we're doing it, but let's do something in a way that we care about, that makes a difference. Let's have a sense of purpose in what we're doing. So discipline three is all about finding that deeper reason that achieving the goal is going to make a difference in the world, a difference in our team, maybe even a difference in our personal lives. That's why we call it the discipline of engagement. I'm a great supporter of leaders all over the world. I never try to say anything bad about leaders, but I will say this is what we miss, because we think if we've been clear, that's enough. But
Mm-hmm.
we have to be both clear and compelling. People need a reason to give high achievement. It's not just because we told them to. They need to feel like it makes a difference, like they're doing
Mm-hmm.
something that. So that's what discipline three is about, the discipline of finding the reasons that this goal matters and bringing the heart into it, into how you perform. Last of all, discipline four is the one that has the payoff in it. So discipline four is the discipline of accountability. Now, anybody who's keeping track, focus, leverage, engagement, now we have accountability. If you're a smart aleck, you would say, hey, the first letter of those spells flee, Jim, F-L-E-A. But still, I don't know if I like that metaphor, but still, the fourth one is accountability. And accountability is the stickiness. That's what holds it all together. So in discipline 4, every member of every team holds themselves and others accountable to a committed action for the week. So think about it this way. Everybody from the top leader all the way to the bottom, every single week says, here's what I'm going to do this week to move our goal. And they say it not only to themselves, but they say it out loud to their whole team. So the real difference in discipline 4 is that people make themselves accountable to each other, not just to their boss.
Mm-hmm.
And again, no disparagement of anybody in a leadership role, but people are far more likely to keep a commitment they made to their teammates than they are to one they made to their leader. Hopefully they do both, but we all know people who work for us miss their commitments. But when they make a commitment to each other, they don't miss those, you see. So discipline 4 becomes this powerful cohesion factor that pulls a team of people together, because every single week they hear each other saying, hey, this week I'm going to do this. And in the meeting, the 5 days later, they say, hey, I got it done. Next week, I'm going to do this. Hey, I got that done. So they build trust and respect with each other because they see each other following through, right? It's a kind of cohesion that no leader, bless us all in leadership, we can't bring that. That has to come from the inside of a team outward. So those 4 things: focus, leverage, engagement, accountability. That's the recipe.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that kind of leads me right into this next part because I think as you were explaining that, I'm like, okay, this is all good. It's all great to have all these kind of things, but it really going on is how do you build a culture of execution that now goes, hey, here's the heart. We're going to hold each other accountable. We're going to all work. We're going to grab the oar and we're going to row in the same direction
Yes. Yes.
to go off and do this. So how do you do that where it's a culture, not a one
Yeah,
word initiative?
that's
You
right.
know,
That's right.
in a world
And
where people have so many distractions today,
oh yeah,
how do you
totally.
actually create a
Totally.
culture around
Yeah,
that?
three things make that work. And boy, I just think that's one of the best questions I've been asked all year. Thank you, my friend, for the thought that went into that question. So one, we have a way of doing it that's incredibly simple. We don't need a 300-page, methodology manual to tell us. We got 4 little things we're trying to remember every week. So that the simplicity is a big part of it. The second is the ability to focus. Most of the people who follow leaders like you and me, Mike, they may value us, they may care about us, they may respect us, but most of the time they complain about us because we just keep adding on and adding on and adding
Hmm.
on, right? And we always think we've got enough capacity to do one more thing than we really do. So the second thing that really drives it is it force functions reduction. Execution is not a discipline of yes. Execution is a discipline of no. It's saying no to things that matter less than the one thing we have said is the most important. That's the second part that
That
makes it.
was very, very powerful. Repeat that. The
Oh yeah,
execution is
yeah,
not what?
yeah. Yeah, isn't this a funny thing? And believe me, I know the truth of this. So many leaders think execution is about saying yes, yes, we'll do that. Yes, we can
Hmm.
achieve that. Right? And it's the opposite. It's a completely wrong approach. So execution is the discipline of no. It's not a discipline of yes. It's a discipline of saying no to the less important so that you have energy and capacity to give to the most important. Dr. Covey used to love to say, you can only say no if you have a bigger yes inside you. And I love that.
Ooh,
I wish I'd said that, Mike.
yeah,
That's a powerful quote right there,
that
isn't
is
it?
really
So
powerful.
the bigger yes is that we have agreed that this one goal is the single most important thing we're doing this year. Now, it doesn't mean we only have one goal. It
Hmm.
means we only have one most important goal. But when we agree to that, suddenly we say, well, wait a minute, we have to say no to that. That'll have to wait till next quarter. That'll have to wait till next year because we've got this big goal. See? So
Hmm.
by the discipline of focus, we give people that bigger yes, because now they know what it is. And when you don't have that, I say this with great compassion for every leader, you and your team are on a mission to try to do everything. And we all know if everything is priority one, guess what's really priority one?
Hmm.
Nothing
Nothing.
at all. I can see your lips move. So
Yep.
So that's really one of the, and then last of all, I just want to hammer this one tiny time, if you'll allow me,
Hmm.
is
Oh, definitely.
so much of leadership is top down. I was a leader for 44 years. I'm
Hmm.
a lot of the time I was a top down guy. I tell people what to do. They tell their people what to do. And hopefully somewhere out there, somebody actually does what we've said they're supposed to do. But top down leadership is incredibly limited, incredibly finite, and unbelievably uninspirational. Right? Your
Hmm.
boss, four levels above you, says this is what matters most. Great. Congratulations. I
Hmm.
couldn't care less, is the way a lot of people would feel. So the beautiful thing about 40X is it's top down from the standpoint that usually the leaders pick the most important goal, but it's bottom up on how we execute. Like
Hmm.
discipline one is the leader's discipline, choose the focus. But two, three, and four are bottom up. Two, three, and four are how we're going to achieve it. So every person on every team understands the direction from above, but has a big role to play in how we actually accomplish it. And I think
Yeah.
honestly, that's what it's that sense of ownership. We weren't just given an order and then the boss went to have lunch and we're supposed to go take the
Hmm.
hill. It doesn't work that way. We got direction from the leaders at the top,
Hmm.
but the execution part of it was bottom up. And
Yeah.
that combination of top down and bottom up, I'm using my fingers,
Hmm.
is I think that's honestly what makes it such a powerful discipline.
It is, and that is such a great leadership lesson there that you just explained in a way that I think everyone can walk away and see how it falls in their life. And that is, they need the followers need the leader to declare where we're going.
Mm,
But so many times the failure comes that they declare where they're going and they lay out everything on how to get there when they're not the ones, like you said, leverage
right.
early on. Like if you're
Mm,
going to leverage the people and the talent,
beautiful.
bring that
That's
in.
right.
And your
And
system, what you just explained,
yeah,
just is a real simple way
Mike,
of
thank you.
an easy framework to follow
Hmm.
to actually
Yeah,
truly
thank you,
leverage.
brother. You're so kind about
I
that.
love
You
that. So
said
that,
that beautifully back. You said it
yeah.
beautifully back. And I'm
So,
grateful for the way you said that. And I want to say this one last thing, if you don't mind me slipping it in really
mhm,
fast, is the problem with top-down leadership is people have no involvement. All they do is take orders. So if you give people some involvement, they will commit. We're
mhm,
all more committed to things that we were part of choosing. That's just a human trait, not about
mhm,
business or anything else. That's how human beings
yeah.
operate. So if you give people a voice, you ask their opinion, you let them express what they think. They don't really care so much in the end if you didn't choose their idea, so long as they had a voice.
Mhm.
So long as their opinion was valued and they had a chance to weigh in on it, they can kind of reconcile that for other reasons you chose something else, but they were part of it. People will never be fully committed to things they are not highly involved in. They won't. You can get compliance because people don't want to lose their job. They want to get their increase, whatever it
Mhm.
is. They'll comply. I'm not saying that they'll follow
Mhm.
orders, but they will never go beyond that. They'll never go all the way to commitment. So if you look across the world right now, you can almost separate every team between those that are compliant and those that are truly committed. And it's the committed ones that are achieving great results and building great workplaces and growing the next generation of leaders. That's where all the great stuff is happening when
That
people have a
is.
chance to be really committed.
That's awesome. That with the way you explained that reminded me of a statement that I heard from Walt Disney, and he was talking about how he had a young girl come in and ask him, "What do you do, Mr. Disney?"
Mm,
And his response to the young girl was he said that he's like a bee in a garden of beautiful flowers, and his job as the leader is to pollinate the flower. So he
mm.
flies from one flower to the next to pollinate it, and then the flower turns into this beautiful thing. And I just thought that was such a great leadership
Mm,
analogy that he used. And I didn't, for all the quotes I've seen of Disney, I haven't seen that one enough, but I was like,
yeah.
that is a great story is because that he helps and you're setting the leader pollinates it and the
Yes.
and the
Beautiful.
flower does
That's
the
beautiful.
work. And
I love that.
so that's
I
so
love that.
awesome.
I have
So
not heard that. I have not heard that Disney quote. I appreciate
oh,
you
okay.
sharing them.
Yeah, I
I wrote
just
that down. That's going to be a good one
yeah,
for me.
I actually I saw it in an interview of him, and I was like, wow, I'd never seen that clip before.
I love
But it was
that.
a very,
I,
very powerful statement that he said. So, you know, in my world of coaching and working with my clients, I talk a lot about mindset first, then
mm,
action, because I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I did all the action, I had all the accountability at times, but my mind wasn't quite there. I was hoping that that would be the byproduct
yes.
early to my
Yeah.
career. So, and I did that journey for so long, and then I had to do that. So when you look at mindset first, action, and execution kind of lives at that intersection there. How do you keep mindset aligned so that execution doesn't falter? How do
Yeah. What a
you
great question.
work on that?
It's probably the best question of the day from you, my friends, on a whole list of A+ questions, but this one's a big one because whoever's listening to us right now, I bet they just leaned closer to the speaker,
Hmm.
want to hear what the answer to that question is. And I really do believe this with all my heart that one of the things that we miss in leadership is we aren't clear enough about our intention. Why are we doing something? And if we are, and we don't, someone asked me last week, can teams execute just as well on a goal that doesn't matter as a goal that does matter? And I said, categorically not. And then they wanted to argue a little bit because it's just a
Hmm.
business, but
Yeah.
we have a board of directors, we have market share, we have stock price, we have all these things. And I said, yeah, but not a single thing you listed mattered, really mattered to the people who did all the executing. There's an old saying that says the front line produces the bottom line in every organization. And anybody who doesn't believe that's true, and leaders occasionally think we are the champions of the universe, but if you
Hmm.
don't believe that's true, just send your whole front line home for the week. See how much executing happens. The
Hmm.
front line produces the bottom line in every single enterprise in the world.
Yep.
But yet, when we're setting this direction, when we're setting a goal, when we're communicating the goal, when we're investing in people to reach the goal, how often do we think about the front line? We don't, right? They're
Hmm.
last. They're the last people in line. They get only what's left at the end. And yet, in the truth of it is, every customer experience your company has is created by somebody on the front line. Right? Every sale that gets made is created by somebody on the front line. It's an amazing dichotomy. So my point, I'm not trying to pontificate,
Hmm.
is
No.
the more we get clear about doing things that permeate all the way to the front line, if we can have values that go all the way to the front line, if we can have a mission and a purpose that reaches the front line, if we can have a system of accountability that lets us respect each other and see what we're doing, that goes all the way to the front line. And honestly, that's what I love best about 40X. Frontline is not a leadership methodology. 40X
Hmm.
is a company methodology, and the CEO is expected to apply all four disciplines in the same way that the lowest ranking customer support person on the phone is expected to.
Hmm.
Everybody plays in the same game. And frankly, I think that's what makes it work. So a little bit long answer, sorry, but to your
No, that was
question,
perfect.
that's what
Perfect
I'm looking
answer. I
for.
loved it. I loved it. So, it's kind of like a quick tip time right now. So, for
Mm,
someone listening who says, I'm stuck in my whirlwind this week, what's
mm,
one action
mm.
that they can take right now that will help them
Beautiful,
relieve the feeling of stuck?
beautiful. Man, great question. You're really good at this podcasting, my friend. So I want to give
I
you
wish I could.
it's a 1A and 1B. So
Hmm.
1A is to decide what the single most important thing you're working on this week is. Just decide. Even if you don't have an organization that's chosen the wildly important goal, you can still decide for yourself. And even if you're talking about a personal goal, you can decide for yourself. So, number one, get really clear about the thing that matters most in your world this week. Second, decide one or two definitive actions that would move you toward that goal. Don't do 10. Don't try to be the high achiever. Don't do it. You won't, because you won't follow through on all of that. Pick one or two actions and make yourself accountable to another human being for doing those actions. The greatest form of accountability in the world is when you tell somebody else that starting today, this is what you're doing. Because now you can't kid yourself anymore and say, no, I really meant tomorrow. I'm really going to start tomorrow. No, I told Mike today was the
Hmm.
day. I'm starting today, So
Yeah.
you make yourself accountable to another person, which is discipline four. It will push you forward. So clarity is number one, and accountability is number four. And you bring those two into play. You can do that in 5 minutes of your day. And if you and I do that every morning of my life, if you don't mind a quick personal
Hmm.
anecdote,
No, that's
the
great. I love to
43
see.
years I've been in business, every single morning of my life, I decide the three most important outcomes I'm going to produce that day. And
Hmm.
the outcome might be a business outcome. It might be something with my family. It might be a phone call to my son or my daughter. It might be any one of a number of things, but I'm choosing first thing every morning on the back porch of my house with a cup of coffee. What are the three outcomes I'm committed to producing today? And then I can't end my day until I produce those three outcomes. Now, if everybody's listening, remember, I'm not grandstanding. I mean, some of my outcomes are to make a phone call. Some of
Hmm.
my outcomes are to write a chapter of my book or review or edit a chapter of my
Yeah.
book. It can be big or small, but every day I bring that sense of, in the whole scheme of my life, what matters most today. And then I make three tangible commitments. And at the end of every day on my bedside table is a notebook where I check off, did I do those three things or not? And if
Yeah.
I check them all off, I sleep like a baby. And if I don't, I don't feel so good. I have to try again the next day. But just bringing that kind of clarity to the beginning of
Hmm.
each day, I think it's one of the reasons that I've been blessed to enjoy the success that I've had.
I love that because, for everyone listening to this that's had conversations with me, you've heard me say before, and Jim said it's so great right there in a way is, you know, just focus on needle moving activities. Did it move the needle forward? Do you have progress? I don't care
Mm-hmm.
how far the needle goes forward. I don't care how much of your progress you've had, but if you're moving, you're growing.
That's
And
right.
that's what I loved about, like, you can chunk it down to these. Did I write a chapter? Did I do that? Did you do something that moved your initiative forward? So I
Beautiful.
love that. I love
That's
that.
beautifully said, Mike.
Um,
Can I put a cherry on top of
yeah,
the ice
please
cream
do
sundae?
because you're
I think one of the biggest areas of confusion in the world, but particularly in any form of performance, is the subtle distinction between something that is a good thing to do and something that produces a great outcome. Those are two separate things. And the more you become a student of this, the more you'll see a gap between those two things. But in the beginning, they all look the same, right? So,
Mhm.
so somebody says, well, we ought to be writing a handwritten thank you note to every customer. That's a good thing to do. Who wants to argue against that? Except it's a very low leverage thing to do in terms of producing results. So
Mhm.
I'm not down on writing thank you notes. I write a lot of them
No.
myself. I'm just trying to illustrate the most confusing thing in the world is somebody says, this would be a good thing for us to do. Our company should be doing this. Yes, but does it move the needle? Right back to what you
Mhm.
said. But when you keep asking that question, you get better and better at answering it. Like you would say to me, Jim, that's a good thing to do. Thanks for that idea. But we don't have the capacity to do that right now because we've got to do things that move our needle.
Mhm.
That distinction alone would change most of the teams in the world and likely make them high performers just by doing the one thing you said.
Yeah, and I think to put a little cherry on top of your cherry there from something you said a little bit earlier was, you know, if it's good, it's probably not the wig.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
That's
is
right.
good enough?
Mhm.
What's the thing that you need to
That's right.
do that would make it great?
That's right. And to
Uh,
recognize that you can't become great at everything at the same time.
no.
You've got to focus on the one thing first. 6 months from now, maybe you are great. You can move to another thing. You can become great at five things, but you got to do that one at a time. If you try to do all five, the law of diminishing returns takes over and everything comes out average at the end.
Yep. Yep. And I think, like, to put it in sports terms, I always like
Yeah.
to put this
Yeah.
analogy.
Well, it's
If you really
football
look at,
season.
like, yeah, football season, like, what made Tiger Woods great on the golf course? He won. Like that's what made him
Yeah,
great.
we wouldn't even be having the
But
conversation, would
but
we?
there was a lot of things he did playing golf that he was really good at that made him
Yeah,
great. Good
that's
at
right.
driving, good at putting, good at this, but he was a
That's right.
great winner.
Yeah.
Like he
Yeah.
had he knew he was focused on winning.
Yes. Yes. And whatever that combination was, we would certainly acknowledge some of it was
Yeah.
skill, some of it was mental game, not
Hmm.
getting panicked or missing shots.
Yeah.
Maybe some of it was health and fitness. He's the first golfer I ever saw in my life that worked out with weights and had a
Hmm.
real training regimen. Maybe others did, but I never saw it. He
No,
was an
not to that
innovator in
level.
so many ways.
Hmm.
So he brought together that system of things that enabled
Hmm.
him to become great. Well, that's really a way. I'm borrowing a little bit of his
Hmm.
fame, but to say the 40X is just like that, right?
It
It's a
is.
system that brings together focus and leverage, engagement and accountability in a powerful way. And it lets you then operate that system
Hmm.
to achieve whatever you want.
Yeah. So before we wrap up with a couple things, I want people because I know there's some people on this that are going to be listening that probably hear a lot of what we've said of like offices or corporations or organizations. But I tell everyone as you're launching as an entrepreneur, you're
Mhm.
wearing all the hats that Jim has talked about. You're wearing them all. But what I
Yes.
found so often is that you wear them all at the exact same time and you look silly. When you look and you can follow this system of what Jim was saying and go and change these things, you can go, okay, when I am wearing this hat as sales
Yes.
manager, I'm doing this. So when I'm wearing this hat as
Yes.
CFO, I'm doing this and put the hat on and go all in on this wildly
Yeah.
important goal and follow this framework as you launch doing
Mhm.
multiple things. So as we wrap this up with what you shared there, what are one or two micro actions that the listener can implement in the next 72 hours that'll help them to go on this journey to
Yeah.
get going? Other than the most obvious one is go buy his book.
Yes, please. I still have grandchildren that need to go to college. So
Yes.
I almost think you answered it for me though. You're such a great interviewer, Mike, that if I was going to say, so you said 72 hours, that's a beautiful frame for a question, is spend a few minutes today and ask yourself, in my business life, what is the number one achievement for this year that matters? Or say for this quarter, it's all fine. And maybe even in my personal life, what is the one outstanding thing that I would like to see be different or better about me this quarter, this 6 months, this year? So I have a professional and a personal WIG, in other words, wildly important goal. And when people have both of those, it seems to provide some great balance. And then from the moment you set it, decide how you will measure it. Because if you can't measure something, you can't win at it. You can do it, but you can't win because you don't know the difference between winning and losing if you don't measure. So what is the
Hmm.
measurement system for the goal you've chosen? And then last of all is every single day of your life, ask yourself, what am I doing today to move the needle? And make that important. Everybody has this whirlwind of a day job. The
Hmm.
phone is ringing, the emails are piling up, your boss is calling, you got everything to think about. But the act of execution is carving out a small amount of your capacity to dedicate exclusively to the thing that matters most. And that's what we don't do. I mean, you have a to-do list with 27 things on it. You try to do all 27. It's the most natural thing in the world, but it's the worst way to live a life. It's the worst way to build a career. It's the worst way to lead a team. The best way for all three of those things is to have a focus on what you're trying to do at this moment and then hold yourself accountable for making progress every single day. Those two things would change everything. Any name an organization, name an industry. You can't name one.
You
We're
can't.
doing those two things with real
Hmm.
rigor. Wouldn't transform what's going on in the organization.
Yeah. And before I wrap this up with Jim, is I want you guys to all walk away with one simple thing. And the reason there's such great alignment with Jim and I is I I always walk around saying I'm not that smart of a guy. I just execute, I stay in action, and I don't give up. But he gave you guys a framework that really falls in line with just keep it simple. don't overcomplicate this more than you find a way to keep it simple, because if it's simple, it's executable. And if it's simple and executable, you can do it consistent, and that's where it's kind of stretching you. So Jim, where can listeners find out more about you
Oh,
and
thank you.
do this? Other
Yeah.
than the fact that I'm going to challenge everyone on here to go read his book. It's a
Mm,
great book, especially if you're into leadership or you're in personal growth, you're in business growth. Go check out his book.
mm.
And do that. But where else can they learn more
Yeah,
about you?
thank you. You're so kind. I wanted to add on to what you said that the opposite of what you said is true. Also, complexity is the enemy of execution. So what you say about simplicity, that message of yours, I think that's so powerful. The way you say it is beautiful, and it's going to make a huge difference in the world. But thanks for giving me 10 seconds. I love to just say anybody if you like what you've heard today, of course, the Four Disciplines book is out there. Millions of copies have been sold at this point. You wouldn't have any trouble finding it or finding a used one if you want to find that. I have two things I'm doing that I hope are helpful. One is I have a weekly newsletter called Execution Insights, where I give one piece of leadership or execution advice to anybody who wants it. It's usually a message accompanied by a 4 or 5 minute video. It's very easy. You can eat a sandwich while you're looking at it. But it's my way of just making a deposit every single week. So if you want to go to executioninsights.com, that's my website, you'll find a place where you can subscribe to that newsletter and you get a copy of it every single week. And then just in the last month, I've started a podcast, trying to be like Mike. But my podcast is a solo podcast where I just take the opportunity to go deeper on whatever the newsletter has been talking about. So, for example, this week the newsletter was about the power of middle management and how it's really the connective tissue that holds the C-suite and the front line together. And they're the most undervalued and underappreciated group of people in the world are middle
Hmm.
managers. Well, the podcast then went really deep on that subject. So if you want the quick bites, you get a newsletter, and if you want to
Hmm.
go deeper on Thursday, that's on Tuesdays, the newsletter. On Thursdays, you get the podcast. So those two things,
That's
both
great.
called Execution Insights, you can find them almost
Hmm.
anywhere by typing in those two words right together. And I hope people will subscribe and come to enjoy that. Thanks for giving me a
Yeah,
chance
well,
to mention it.
I appreciate you being on here, and we're going to have in the show notes below a copy to get to Amazon to get to his book, also to the website to get on his newsletter as well and listen to his
Thank you,
podcast.
Mike.
So
Thank you.
please give that. So I appreciate you being on this Authentic Edge podcast with us. Here we help people turn mindset into actionable outputs. So your
Mm.
work gives our listeners the playbook and how to do that. So I hope you guys dive in and got that. Keep looking for more things on this and comment what you thought below. We love to share and get into Jim's world. Appreciate you guys all.